Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chenard. I am here with Glenn Willis, and we are recording on a Monday evening after Dyson Daniels got his contract extension a few hours ago. And Glenn, am I cutting into your quality Seattle Seahawks time?
I guess they are playing right now. No, it's no. All the text messages right now are about the Mariners because everyone is stressed out that I think the Blue Jays just went ahead 4-3. So no, it's all Mariners right now. So
I
yeah,
forgot about that.
yeah.
I should have been paying better attention. Okay, wow.
Well, and I always joke that I work in consulting, and when Seattle sports teams do well, it's easier to sell to people because they're in a better mood. So I always root for Seattle sports teams selfishly because yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I feel the same way, just like I don't stand in the media section going, "Go Hawks," but like if the Hawks don't suck, like that makes my job better.
Yes, yeah. Nice parallel there.
So it's never a bad thing.
Yeah.
Um, Dyson Daniels for
Yeah.
100. What do you think?
Bargain. Yeah, so it's interesting the back and forth on X, Twitter today, and a little bit on Blue Sky as well. I think a lot of Hawks fans see that as fair market value for kind of where he is in his career. He's 22 years old. Last year was his first year as a starter. And I think fans have questions like, can he broaden his offensive game? Can he become a better three-point shooter? Can he become a better free throw shooter? Right? All those sorts of things. And I think that, for fans that might feel like this is a good place for his contract to be. For me, he's one of the best. I don't know, 2, 3 defenders in the league. Is he the best defender in the league? Like I don't want to spend time hashing that out. Right? We can have an argument about that. But I think it's a real bargain, and I trust his work ethic to help him to grow his offensive game. There was a lot of burden and usage on him last year. Once Jalen went down, he had to do more. Like, other injuries, they traded Hunter. He had, not that Hunter was ever really a primary, but he had to do more. And then I think the load on offense is going to be less this year because you have Luke Kennard, you have Nikhil Alexander Walker, you have Kristaps Porzingis, hopefully a healthy Jason the whole year. And so it's going to be interesting to see how his offensive role changes. But I trust his work ethic to kind of get him to kind of do more. It's interesting. I looked up a couple stats today. Among guards, he had the fourth best field goal percentage uh, of anyone who had 800 field goal attempts or more. He had the fourth best field goal percentage among guards. So now that doesn't, the free throw issues impact his true shooting percentage. 3-point shooting also impact the true shooting percentage. My guy Chester out there, I think it's a good points on that side of the conversation over there. But I just trust him. I just trust him to keep getting better, and I think this is a real value. I thought it would be higher, but it went 4 years, not five. I mean, it went 4 years and not like 4 by 30, or whatever. So I think this is a good value for the Hawks, and I think it gives them some flexibility because do they want to bring Chris back, trades extension, and so forth. And so I think this is a good place for them to continue to have some flexibility to kind of work going into next summer.
Yeah, I think you said it. Like, I think the thing that they've done here is they've locked him up long term, but also left themselves some Kristaps room if they need it.
Yep.
I was, I don't know, I was kind of thinking 5 years all along, so I was a little bit surprised when it's 4 years, but for someone in Dyson's situation, it kind of makes sense. Like he gets the no risk, life-changing money, but he also has the opportunity to be a free agent for, his next potentially really big contract as he goes into his prime at like age 26. So,
Yeah.
this gets him out just in time. I was thinking like, the Hawks would put 5 years, 110 to 115 on the table or something like that. And so, this kind of falls in line with that. It's probably a little bit better for Dyson. It's probably best for all parties because the Hawks get the deal done, but also, Dyson simultaneously gets his life altering money and sets himself up for his next deal. And then when you look at like around the league, like, Shaden Sharp got 4 years, 90 million. Tumani Kamara got 4 years, 82 million. Keegan Murray got 5 years, 140 million. Like, I don't know if you stack Dyson's contract up against any of those, I think they're getting a steal. So this is I think this is terrific news for
Yeah,
the Hawks and Hawks fans.
yeah, and I think the I mean I don't want to speculate what Dyson and his representatives had in mind, but if he wins a Defensive Player of the Year or two in the next 4 years, if he's a perennial first team All NBA player and he grows his offensive game, he gets back to that market faster and with more pedigree, and more accomplishment and all those sorts of things. And so sometimes players do want to have that shorter path back to that market value, believing in themselves to continue making an impact and growing their game. If he makes an all-star game or two, it may be hard to visualize that unless his offensive game takes a really big step forward. But I mean, Draymond Green's made a bunch of all-star teams like 99% for his defense. Of course, he played on a championship pedigree team, and that makes a difference in terms of how you're regarded as well. But it wouldn't surprise me. Part of their thought process was that Dyson believes he's going to continue to take steps, and he wants to get back to that market sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, at the same time, the Hawks kind of nibbled around at the back end of the roster and made a series of moves essentially, but the biggest one was upgrading or converting Keaton Wallace's. Converting is probably the best phrase. That's the NBA technical accurate term for what happened here. They converted Keaton Wallace's two-way contract to a standard NBA contract. So I guess, looking at those transactions, but starting with Keaton and what it means for the rotation this year that they gave him the full NBA deal.
Yeah, so I mean, there's several things, and this is me kind of connecting dots all by myself to a degree. So I want to be honest about that, right? But and I told you offline, I would have preferred that be Toppin because I think they need that forward depth, but I think Toppin's kind of ready to be your fourth forward or fourth combo forward, whatever it might be. But on the other side of things, Keaton has given like 2 years to like leading at the G League level and setting by example and investing in and organizations really do value guys that buy into the culture they're trying to set and the selflessness and all that sort of stuff. And we talked about last year that if you have bring guys in your G League team and when they make strides, and he had 3, 4, 5 games last year. We had NBA games last year where he had a significant impact on them winning a game, right?
For sure.
And so for me, it's interesting because I think most people look at him and say, you're not a point guard offensively, right? But on the other side, he's a legitimate bona fide point of attack defender. He can he gives you that depth and that role. If Nikhil Alexander Walker misses 3 weeks or whatever, you could slot him up. It might just be 10, 12 minutes a game while Dyson's off the court. It might be Dyson on with him or right, whatever it might be. But having more point of attack, the defense depth is good and it's helpful. On offense, I think his catch and shoot's pretty good. He's, but I don't think you want him running pick and roll against the top 10 defense in the league. There's just a role that's there for him that makes sense. And so for me, it's like I have how how I feel about Jacob Top, and I really believe he's believes that defense is his path, rebounding is his path, and the offensive aggressiveness and having confidence to attack downhill and get to the rim and use his length, a willing 3 point. I think he has a great future in the league. But I think at the same time, he was there for what the last 2 months of last season, and now one off season kind of coming in. Keaton's been around for a while, and has kind of waited his turn and has bought in and buys into the habits, buys into the philosophy, the team first, all that sort of stuff. So I think Toppin has more rotational value in the form of forward depth. But I could also see like you can't have too much point of attack defense on your roster. You just can't have too much of that. And on that side of the floor, I love Keaton. He's fantastic on that side of the floor. And on the other side, for offensively, this team has a whole lot more offensive capability than it did last year. So I don't think you're going to see Keaton thrust into kind of fake point guard minutes so much like there he was at times last year.
Right. I'm in sort of the same boat as you. Maybe we're going to agree too much, but like I, I could kind of see doing that with Toppin, but at the same time, I think I'm a little bit biased by the preseason.
Yeah.
I think they did more point Keaton in the preseason than they're going to do in the regular season, and I think that biased my opinion a little bit.
Hmm.
So in a way, I think, Keaton might be more valuable because he gives you more point of attack defense, and he, specifically gives you like very good point of attack defense on, smaller guards. So in that way, he might be more valuable, more ready for an NBA rotation than Jacob Toppin, who I think, gives you a little bit more as a two-way player. I think in a way, like Toppin is kind of like a young leader. Like Asa was talking the other day about how, Toppin's been valuable helping him, get ready for an NBA season. I think in College Park, like he might be sort of the vet of the College Park Skyhawks this year.
Hmm.
And I think of the three, you look at these two-way contracts and, it seems like more years than not, somebody else's contract will get converted through the season. Like you make some moves at the trade deadline, somebody comes, somebody goes. Like if there's a roster spot and you're converting somebody at the end of this season, I sort of suspect that it would be Toppin first.
Yeah, I would agree. And like I said, I think maybe tenure was the kind of the differentiator there between which way they went because Keaton's been around a while, knows what they want, all that sort of stuff. But man, I really do believe in Top. I think Toppin's a future rotation player. I think he's not that far off from that. And it's the confidence he brings to the court. You watch him play with. I mean, watching him handle the ball last year, watching him handle it now. Obviously, he worked on it a ton in the offseason, tighten that up, and he's willing to kind of get downhill, attack seams, and he knows how to use his length. But his time will come, and I think he knows that. You watch him carry himself on the court. He's like I just feel like the thought process I'm watching is my time's coming. I'm just going to keep working. I'm just going to keep working. I'm just going to keep working, getting better and getting better and getting better. My time will come. And but I think having a guy that has that kind of size and that kind of mobility is very helpful. Defensively he works really hard. He works hard as a rebounder, all that stuff. So I fully believe his time is coming. You know, but it'll be interesting to see as rosters continue to get cut down. Is there another thing that might happen here? And we saw campaign get cut. We saw Dinwiddie get cut. There's been a slew of other ones. And I know that some Hawks are like, man, there's experienced point guards out there. Why do we give Keaton the full thing? Again, I think that's mostly about culture and defensive capability and defensive depth. Besides, I don't think campaign's agent will let him go somewhere where he's literally blocked from playing. I think he's going to try to land somewhere where he can actually be the backup point guard and play, and those sorts of things. But no, I'm super excited about Toppin's future, and I think that he's going to be a legit rotation player, uh, pretty soon.
I mean, I could see the Hawks getting a guard at some point. I mean, they have the open roster spot. They sort of have a need for maybe somebody who could direct an offense at some point down the line. I just think that in doing this with Keaton today, like if something like that happens, it's not going to be for a while. Like I think they're putting Keaton forward as we're going to try it this way for a while at least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Keaton plays hard. He's a professional. He's team first. He's organization first. And I think I think we all know that's what the Hawks value from a culture standpoint, and I think that's part of the thought process there. But again, I think Toppin's not far behind. So
Yeah. Um, what do you make of the rest of the moves with Dante over Bassi, Houston on the two-way deal? Anything to you want to add about these sort of back end back end of the roster
yeah,
moves that they've made?
well, I mean, Houston can shoot the ball like he's very very high level shooter. His challenge is kind of what position do you play him on defense? How do you have to hide him a little bit. Now he's a pro. He knows where to be. He's in the right place. All that sort of stuff. But he doesn't have vertical athleticism to deploy defensively. Things like that. The lateral movement is a little stiff. All that sort of stuff. But mean, I guess some say you can't have too much shooting depth on your roster, and he can definitely shoot the basketball. Dante, I mean, it's funny is talking to Brad a little bit. Like the conversation around the G League last year was that Dante was the best center in the G League easily last year. And if you look at his numbers, it supports that. I mean, he was really, really, you know, productive. And you watch him, in the preseason here, he looks like he's a legitimate defender. Offensively, he doesn't have what Onyeka and KP have. The KP has the volume shooting, Onyeka has the three level kind of ability that's there as well to handle the short roll, all that sort of stuff. So that stuff he needs a year at College Park to kind of look, how do we run DHO here? How do we convert DHO? How do we run our wham? And can I pass the ball from the net from the 5 feet left of the nail, 5 feet right of the nail in our wham action? But defensively, he's a total pro, and on the boards he works really really hard. And so I think they went the right direction there. I know that Charles Bassey Muse Twitter account is like all up in arms, but which has been hilarious to watch. Those Muse accounts are just like so weird to me. By the way, I'm still waiting on someone to start a Brad Rowland Muse account, so I don't know why that hasn't materialized yet, but someone out there should do that because it would be hilarious to see that happen. But for me, I think they went the right way. They went young and they went with a guy who has a lot of he moves. I think he can switch. He can get to the level. He's more versatile defensively than I think Bassey is. For me, so I think they went the right direction there. I mean, Bassey's a good, legitimate like 2.5 center on a good team. He can be your third guy and have value. And I hope he lands somewhere that he's happy and that they value him and things like that. But I think the Hawks went the right way there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you nailed it on the head when you said that, Dante's going to have a little bit more defensive versatility, can play more styles. I think I said it last week when, I said something to the effect of like, I didn't quite say it this way, but like if you look at Onyeka and Kristaps, like he's a complement in styles to those two. Like if you have that one physical bruising center that you need guarded in a certain way for one game, like having him active for that game is a nice change up to the style of the two centers that you have, whether even if it's just as an insurance policy for foul trouble or something like that. So, I think they made the right move there. It, you know, in all of these moves, like it still wouldn't even entirely shock me that, Bassey ends up in College Park. Like I'm sure his agents and his representatives, there's all the moves that everybody makes in these last few days before the regular
Yep.
season starts, and you're trying to get your client an opportunity. But like if that doesn't materialize and you're trying to stay ready in the league, like you can look at what Tony Bradley did last year. That's what Bassey's role would be this year. Tony
Right.
Bradley ended up with the Pacers and playing in the NBA finals. Like, you know, being the starting center in College Park isn't the worst thing. And, he's clearly has some skills ready for, an NBA team in terms of, shot blocking, rebounding. He has some skill as a screener. It's a combination where, he could get an NBA job if a few players get hurt down the line. So like it's I don't think it's necessarily a closed door there, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are other interesting things like watching Precious come out, like the Heat cut him, and it's like I don't know. I
Yep.
mean, I feel like I never really know how I feel about him as a player. He's athletic and moves well, but it seems like maybe coaches don't always trust him offensively. I don't. That's watching. I don't know, him play 25 times a year, not 82.
Sure.
In that sense. But there's some pretty good guys that I mean are,
Yeah.
are pretty. Some good depth pieces that are out there kind of floating around. And it'll be interesting to see if the Hawks feel like, no, we're good, and we want to give the opportunities to the guys we have on the roster we have. For me, if there was a combo forward, experienced combo forward that would play on a contract that fits kind of where they are right now, I think that would be interesting to me. But at the same time, like if they're like, no, we want to open that slot up for Toppin, I think that's okay too. But I think the Hawks should be really good this year. I think they're gonna be a really good team this year. And veteran depth is always helpful for a team that's trying to, accomplish something big.
Yeah, and you could add Lamont Butler to this list of like
Yep.
players who, I wouldn't be shocked if you see him in College Park again.
Yep.
he got waived. He had the short opportunity for one game really in the preseason, and he's there for summer league. He's learning the system. Like if he ends up in College Park, you know, I think that's a fairly likely outcome at this point. Even more likely than Bassie. So like is he has some skill running an offense, I think.
Hmm.
Even more than Keaton. Obviously, he's going to come up, compared to Keaton, he's going to come up short in a lot of other areas. But in terms of just running an offense, like he's got the edge on Keaton, and so
Yeah,
having him learning and ready to go if needed, that's I think that's a good person to have in your organization.
yeah, Keaton's a little taller, a little like he's older, more Keaton's more experienced. That's probably the
Oh, for
main
sure.
thing that's there, right? Right. But I mean, the game we watched him live, I mean, man, he was attacking his ball handler constantly. I mean, he was really, really, mixing it up and getting his hands on the ball. We talked about it before. He got that deflection steal that got them into overtime, and I mean, I was really impressed with him. And then offensively, again, not the greatest shooter in the world, but like when there was a seam, he jumped in that seam and attacked the seam and collapsed the defense and made the right play, even if the pass was a little bit more basic and simple on that side of things. I mean, you could tell he knew what they wanted him to do. Like he knew what was like. This is how we run our offense. This is how we play. We jump into the seams. We create collapse the defense. We kick it out. All that stuff. He's a pro. I mean, he's an absolute pro. But a full year, like with College Park, kind of getting more, those habits and patterns and those responsibilities kind of more and more and more kind of ingrained in what he does and creating that muscle memory. I like him. I like him. I like him a lot. But I think there's some work to do to kind of get to a point where he's a guy who's knocking on the door of being your 13th guy in your roster potentially or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we are 2 days from the start of the regular season. Coaches tend to play things pretty close to the vest in the preseason, keep things kind of vanilla. There's always a little bit of cat and mouse in terms of, not trying to give everything away. And of course, you're playing some of your main players, smaller amounts than you're going to see in the regular season. So when we get to the real thing, what are you expecting from the Hawks? What maybe are you expecting style wise that differs from what you would have seen, 12 months ago?
Yeah, so I mean, so for me, it kind of starts with Porzingis' ability to stretch the floor and get the other four or five, depending upon straight up or cross match out of the paint. I think that creates more seams for Jalen to attack. That creates more seams for Zachary Ricochet to attack. On and on. Nickel Alexander Walker, I know Tyler expressed some little frustration in him not letting the 3-pointer fly, but I think Nickel Alexander Walker's like the 0.5 is if a guy's closed down to me and he's taking bad angle, they want me to attack the paint, get a paint touch, right? There's the options you have: a dribble, pass, shoot, right? Attack
Right.
the closeout, and he missed. I think he missed 2 games in the preseason, so that he needed all the minutes he could get in that fourth game, if I'm remembering correctly. There, um, but for me, it really kind of anchors to Porzingis and the stretch ability, the stretch, five concept that he brings us. I think Jalen's scoring is going to go up as a result of that because I just think there's going to be a lot more space for Jalen to attack. I think that's great. But it's interesting. You think about they start off with like Toronto, right? I mean, like Toronto still seems to believe in Scotty Barnes as your point forward. Like, what are we doing here? They added, Ingram and, they still have Pirtle and on and on. I think they're going to be well coached, but their roster building is still weird to me that they don't really have ball handlers on that, on their team. And so that's going to be interesting to me. But on the Hawk side, we saw it all 4 games: play fast, grab and go, get in transition, attack a defense in transition, use your length, fill the lane, attack the rim, all that sort of stuff. And I think for me, we saw in the fourth game with all those Porzingis and Kongwu minutes was, getting those two guys used to like, okay, if a team is going small like the Rockets did in game 4 and are switching 1 through 5, how do you punish that Is it, we saw a lot of Onyeka and Kristaps looking at each other like, do I go to the front of the rim with my small guy on me? Do you go to the front of the rim with your small, And so, and I actually asked him about that after the game, the media session. He talked about, yeah, some adjustment there and things like that. And we got to kind of figure that out. But I think it was great that Quinn gave them a ton of minutes in that game to hopefully get all of those reps. But for me, so much is just anchored to Kristaps and like the ability he has. It's we a lot of people say Gallo, but I mean Kristaps is even a longer range shooter than Gallo. I mean, what's not to love about Danilo Gallinari? Like, what's not to love about the way he plays basketball? But Kristaps is like another full step past Gallo range, and that makes a big difference in terms of the defensive spacing that's there. And it's going to be interesting to see the way Trey takes advantage of that. It's going to be interesting to see, do they want to run lobs to Kristaps sometimes, depending upon if the defense is playing. So I mean, for me, it's like it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. But it's going to be Kristaps, Jalen, and Yeka a lot of those minutes, and seeing how those three settle in and leverage each other. You know, is going to be that's going to be fascinating to me. In that fourth game, Zachary was by far the best player. I mean, Zachary was attacking and transition, attacking the rim, applying rim pressure, and all that stuff. But for me, I think it's like last year: play fast, go push the pace. Attack a defense in transition, and then we get in the half court, it's, strain the defense with, swinging the ball side to side, creating pressure, get the defense moving, all that stuff. So I don't know. Do you think it's going to take a little while for them to kind of settle? Do you think 4 games was enough? Do you think, which I guess the starters really played three for the most part, do you think it's going to take a little while for them to continue to settle in with the new kind of rotation construction?
Yeah, I think it'll take a while. I I think if you look at Trey's career, like he's never been Mr. October, like he's always kind of a slow starter.
Yeah,
So, and he's not the biggest guy, he's not the fastest guy, so he kind of has to operate on the margins, and that requires some calibration. And so I think, it'll look better in 2 months than it does, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday when they play. But like at the same time, and of course it's apples and I don't know, oranges, applesauce, ice cream. I don't know what you want to make for the comparison here, but like it's to me it's a little bit like getting Kristaps is a little bit like of an extension of what happened January 20 when Onyeka took over as a starter because
yeah,
that was a flashbulb moment for Zachary. It was a flashbulb moment for Dyson. Their 2 seasons changed January 20 when Onyeka started because that enabled them to do so much more on offense. With the additional passing, with the additional spacing, like just everything changed for them from that moment. And so getting Kristaps, like they didn't have a second Onyeka on the roster. Now Kristaps is different. He's a lot more of a shooter. He's not as good of a screen setter. But like his shooting is just so ridiculous. And the size and the offensive rebounding, like it, but they just needed a second shooting center on the roster. Period. The fact that it's Kristaps Porzingis is just an unbelievable bonus. But like, I think that's going to make all the difference in the world. Again, it's going to continue for Zachary and Dyson because they're getting more of what helped them thrive last season as they themselves, both turned 20 and 22. And, they're just going to get better from experience and reps and age, but they're also going to benefit from the quality of the teammates that they're playing with.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because you always seem pretty well in tune with what happens in Minnesota. Like, how much of a change is this for Nickeil Alexander Walker? Like, how different does it look for him on the offensive side here compared to what he was doing in Minnesota? Was he playing more with Rudy? Was he playing more with Nas? Like, what did it look like for him when he was on the floor in Minnesota?
Night and day. I mean, night and day difference. I mean, so Edwards. I mean, Edwards is obviously a dynamic player, right? But he's still learning to read the defense. He's still learning to execute pace and to kind of feel like this possession calls for this pace, this possession calls for his pace, and so there's still some pace challenges that Edwards is working through. But like Quinn values ghost screen, brush screen. If a two-man DHO or pick and roll at the right 3-point break gets stuck, someone flash to that corner and drag a defender out away from there to take the pressure off of that getting locked. Like Quinn wants that cut, and that's brand new to Nikhil. It's completely that stuff is really brand new to him. And I think that is going to take him some time to kind of get used to that, in that sense, because a lot of it was Ant loves the kind of the we'll say the three out, which is he's we'll call him two out. I think he really plays shooting guard for them. Get to the 3-point break, clear out the corner, and empty that side and give him all that space because if the opposing defense brings another defender over to that, he gets a little bit kind of locked up on like what's my read, how do I go, which way do I go? And sometimes he just puts his heads down and try to get to the paint. I still think he's learning and growing, and that organization has a lot of confidence in Anthony Edwards. But there was a lot of the three guys on the weak side of the floor watching two guys run DHO pick and roll on the other side of the floor at the 3-point break. That's not what Quinn wants at all, right? Quinn wants pressure, cut. If a third defender comes across to the strong side, someone cut to the rim, create a lob or a pass to a cutter. And so I think that pace is something that Nikhil Alexander Walker is really new to him. I think he's a high processor, so I think he's going to get it pretty quickly. It's unfortunate he missed a couple of preseason games because I think that would have helped him to have those minutes. But I think he's the one, like Kennard knows how to do all that stuff. I mean, Memphis under Taylor Jenkins played motion, movement, all that stuff. So he's got it. But everything in Minnesota is built around Ant and kind of where he is on his trajectory of becoming a more broadly skilled offensive player. I think playing with Trey is going to be faster. I think playing with Jalen's going to be faster. I think playing with Zach's going to be faster. So I think there's going to be an adjustment period there. But I also know he's a very smart player. I know he's self-critical. He's very self-critical. He's very transparent and honest about kind of where he is with the adjustments that he needs to make to do what he needs to do. But I think there is like the offensive system is night and day different than what they ran in Minnesota because of where Ant is on his kind of trajectory of hopefully becoming a faster a guy who can read the play faster, make that pass, give the ball up. You'll see Ant a lot of end of games over possess the ball down to like second defenders coming at me. There's 3 on the shot clock. I had to give it up at 5, to create an open pass for someone else. But he wants to be the guy that takes that shot, right? That's and the Hawks had to lean on Trey a lot last year, and there were some ugly possessions that are there because they didn't really anybody else could do it. But in that like I remember one play against Denver where it got to Nall with like half a second left, and the pass was one step off, and he had to side step. He didn't line that shot the way that you wanted. The game went to overtime, so I just think the pace is going to be different, and I think the constant move, cut, split cut, all that stuff that's totally new to him.
Anything else you want to get in here before we do the real thing?
I mean, I feel like the week's gonna go fast when we get to Wednesday. So was it Wednesday, Friday, Saturday? Is that what we're
Yeah,
looking at
bing,
here?
bam, boom. It's all
Yeah,
gonna
I
happen.
know. So, no, for me, I'm excited about this. I'm excited for Hawks fans about this team. I'm excited to, you know, pod about this team. I'm excited to kind of see how they do. I think this was a really good team. I think the East is kind of wide open, in that sense. But as I talked about before, I think the key is how quickly can they achieve a level of consistency? Is that 5 games in? Is that 10 games? What is that number of games where they get there? And I think that'll kind of determine kind of how they get on that trajectory. But for me, they can close with a lead. They can close games with defensive lineups. When they're playing from behind, they can close games with a ton of shooting on the like. Quinn has a lot more configurability with his roster to play from behind, play from ahead, all that sort of stuff. Than last year, that just was not a thing. And it's going to be fun to watch Quinn have more tools, more solutions to work with. And to see them kind of settle and do that, I think they're going to win a lot of games this year. I think they're going to do well. Um, and I think for Hawks fans, hopefully it's gonna be a fun season.
I've done this backwards because I left off of a question that I should have asked you before I got you to like the concluding question.
Oh, good.
What do you make of Beats game 4 and going into the season like maybe you don't see either one in some of these games, but like, is Veet ahead of Keaton? Is Veet behind Keaton? Like, what was going on? Because it looked in that Houston game like I don't really know. Like, that was the struggle game for Veet, in my opinion.
Agreed. And for me, my guess is teams that have a point, two guards in the wing that can all handle and initiate, you might see more Keaton there. I mean, Beat's just not big enough, for that responsibility. But Beat, huge progress as a shooter last year. I mean, a huge step forward as a shooter last year. And he plays fast. His offensive processing is really, really high.
Yeah.
So if you're playing from behind, I think it swings more to offensive lineups on the floor, and that's Veet. If you have a 8 point lead heading into the fourth quarter, you want to get Keaton out there for 3 to 4 minutes to buy some time until Dyson comes back against a team like Cleveland that can throw two guards at you against a team, other teams that have dynamic guards and those sorts of things. So I really think is, are we winning? Are we losing? Are we ahead? Do we need to catch up? Those sorts of things. And so I think it's gonna be totally matchup based. I think game to game to game, it might be, Veet if we're playing from behind, Keaton if we have a nice lead, we just want pack defense on the floor. I think Quinn probably feels like it's a luxury that he didn't have last year at all to be able to swing one way or the other, depending upon, do we need to catch up in a short period of time, or do we need to throw our best defensive team out there and try to close this out defensively? I think that's must be a luxury for him.
All right. We will get Tyler back soon and jump into this regular season. I don't. Are you supposed to say goodnight, Bob, if like the whole season's about to start in 48 hours? Maybe you should say like good morning, Bob, or something.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess we got to stick with the regular. We don't want to mess anything up, jinx
yeah,
anything. We'll just say goodnight, Bob.
yeah. We'll say goodnight, Bob.
All right. Good night, Bob.
Yeah, Bob.